I'm very pleased to be joined by two experts in the field of Zero Trust and SASE. And first up is Jaye Tilson. Jaye, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, thank you, Roy. It's good to be here. So my name is Jaye Tilson. I am a field CTO for HP Aruba Networking. I've spent most of my life on the customer side before going on to the dark side in a vendor. But now my role really is being out in the field, talking to customers and prospects and really doing things around thought leadership and trying to understand what is happening, what are the trends. And I'm super excited to be here to talk about the trends that we're going to have on.
Excellent. Thank you, Jaye. And joining me as well is Laura Wilber from Enea. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure thing. Thanks, Roy, and very glad to be joining you and Jaye. Appreciate it. And so I'm with Enea. I've been there for several years. It's a Swedish company based in Stockholm. And my role is I'm a inside analyst, if you will, technology and industry analyst. And so I sit in between sort of product marketing and research, our R&D team and our product management team, trying to figure out, just as Roy said, what is going on and how to translate that into something meaningful that we can use internally. So I spend a lot of time actually talking with vendors. So I think between all of us, we'll have some different angles of feedback that we're getting from the market.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. And I know both of you are based in Europe, although you travel around the world. I'm based in North America. So collectively, we'll have multiple viewpoints from all over the world.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yep. And so there are three hot topics that I'll just lay them out so that you're not guessing as an audience and trying to figure out whether you stay to the end or not. And you better stay to the end because we will know. The three hot topics are the impact of what else? AI. You knew it was coming, but it is a real technology. It does have real implications. And so we could talk about the AI impact. So impact of AI first from the attacker viewpoint, because as we know, that's important. And then the impact of AI from a defender viewpoint. And then finally, we'll talk about something that we're seeing out there, which is challenges at the edge. And what we talk about is sort of the enterprise edge, the on-premises component of it, right? Because we keep talking about cloud recently, and leads me to believe that maybe we've maybe forgotten the edge. Hopefully not, but we'll talk about that. All right, let's start with the viewpoints from the attackers on AI, right? So how is AI helping attackers, right? So if you're an attacker and you're listening to this webinar, that's great for you. But we're going to talk about how you're using AI and what's the impact on these enterprise companies that are victims of these attacks. That and maybe on the vendor side, what are you seeing as well? So let me start with Laura, and then I'll go to Jaye next. Right, Laura, what are you seeing? Attacker viewpoint.
It's been really fascinating, and I've been fortunate to be able to go to a lot of shows recently and meet with our partners and really get us seeing two extremes. Which is, we did a big webinar last year, and I got to talk with some of the really great R&D people with Zscaler and with Arista, and we talked about some of the fears that customers had around really sophisticated AI-powered attacks that they would have no defense to, essentially, that there was something out there already at that level waiting to attack them. So we are seeing these really super sophisticated attacks that, for instance, they unfold over months. It's like micro drip data loss, data leakage and that sort of thing. So that is happening, and that's taking super sophisticated multi-agent tools to even be able to detect. On the other end, there's a lot of junk, surprisingly, just a lot of junk flooding the networks, and part of this is what's happening on the black market with script kiddies, and think about, how many thousands of versions of Cozy New England Cottage, on a rainy day, we could spit out, or even worse, like alpha code, where you can generate 1 million versions, of software code, and maybe they're all garbage. But, if you're either amusing yourself or just trying to cause some damage, why not throw everything AI, generative AI can give you at a network? So that is really making what was already always a horrible problem, which is SOC overload, absolutely unbearable. And for the sophisticated and the junk, I'm afraid right now you have no choice but to use AI to defend yourself. You can't deal with the scale or the sophistication. So
which is what we'll talk about next as well. No, that's definitely
okay. We'll
great.
Come back to that.
Yeah. We'll talk about AI, defender viewpoint next.
Yeah.
But I think that's great in the sense where people are talking about AI tools and co-pilots and all these agents, right? Sort of raising the bar and improving the average, and it does so for the attackers as well, right? So and the volume. Jay, what are you seeing? What are you hearing on the attacker viewpoint?
I'm starting to see AI automating different stages of the attacks, anything from reconnaissance all the way to pure execution of attacks. So AI can enable attackers to be more efficient and scale faster. We're also seeing more AI in regards to social engineering, so more convincing phishing emails, obviously like voice messages, being able to take people's voices and mirror them. Very strong social engineering tactics, I think, are really being exploited. I mean, we know that AI is capable of analyzing huge data sets, and that's also helping with zero-day exploits and really identifying vulnerabilities. So I think AI really is an attacker's best friend right now. And I don't wish to say that. And it's a conversation that I have all the time, is that when something new comes along, when a new technology is invented, the attackers always embrace it beforehand. We tend to, the good guys, good girls are the ones that are maybe playing around and having a little bit of fun and making pretty pictures or making poems or converting. I mean, I quite often ask, say, ChatGPT, should pineapple belong on pizza? And we know the answer is no.
Actually, Claude says yes, but that's okay.
But I mean, what I'm trying to say is, whilst we're playing around and having a little bit of fun, the attackers are already looking at what we can do strategically, how we can create a business out of this, how we can make money out of this. So the scalability, the huge data sets and all of those things are being able to take out a lot of the mundane human kind of trawling through large environments to try and understand. They can do it a breeze, and that's pretty frightening.
I would agree. And I agree with you, given what we're seeing with the realism that AI can bring, notably things like character AI, which has been in the press not for the best things. But if they can convince a teenager, right, to do things that are not ideal, then what can they do to the vast majority of us, right, from a social engineering standpoint to gain your trust? And the wonderful thing with this is, as you both point out, it's sort of agentic automated, right? It's sort of AI automated, and the human can step in only when they've been groomed to a certain point. And so, when you look at all these scams, like pig butchering scams, for instance, right, and all these other attacks, with social attacks, you could have 1,000 agents, 1,000,000 agents going out and trying to sort of groom victims. And then when they get to a certain point, the human steps in. But the amount of efficiency you get from an attacker standpoint is tremendous, right?
Yeah, the number of attacks are clearly much more frequent now because of the automation, because of the speed. So they're much more frequent, harder to detect, and tend to be, unfortunately, much more damaging as well.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So let's flip to the other side, because that was pretty pessimistic. Let's look at the glass half full, hopefully. Defense, AI on the defender side, what can it be used for good? How is AI being used to defend against attacks? Where is it showing the most promise? And what are potential challenges and concerns that you both are seeing? I'll start with Jay first this time, and then I'll go to Laura.
I think really it's the flip side of what we just talked about. You've obviously got the ability to automate routine tasks of it, like incident response. It's a lot easier to do containment and recovery, and it speeds up the process of that kind of incident response mechanism. I think with AI, you can also analyze the vast amounts of data that we've talked about. So not only can you use that for the negative, you can use that for the good as well. You can detect anomalies and potential threats very, very quickly and in real time. You can obviously also identify and prioritize vulnerabilities and deal with patch management. So I think I know I've pretty much repeated what I said the bad guys and girls are doing, but we can do that as well. We can also analyze those huge data sets and do all of that thing quickly, automate things, take out the potential human element of error. Because unfortunately, if you are doing mundane jobs and you are trawling through logs, you can miss them. And you're unlikely to do that if you chuck that data set at some form of AI machine learning. So I know we have been a little bit pessimistic, but if we can start to take those tools as well, we can be more reactive, react faster, patch faster, get on top of things. So I see the future as being pretty bright, to be honest, if we can start to utilize these tools.
Yeah, I think that's the if, right? If we can start using these tools, and then we adopt it and we embrace it, which we have to, and stop making those cat videos, right? Then for sure, right? We have a chance. Laura, what are you seeing out there, and what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I'll echo there what Jaye said, as well as, and what you mentioned, like patch management. I mean, there's a lot of super sophisticated defenses we can do, but just old-fashioned basic housekeeping, can really fend off even a lot of the very super sophisticated attacks. But on the sophisticated side, we really are seeing, we're fortunate. We work with a lot of the leading security vendors, and the amount of innovation that's going on right now, particularly in network threat detection and response, anomaly detection, and being able to work across really diverse data sets or device, sources of data, as well as time periods, and just amazing work at discovering super subtle attacks that there's no human that could detect those. And, so that's really encouraging to see. Yeah, they can come up with something great, but we've got some sophisticated tools to catch them. And then on the other side is something, speaking of being kind of old-fashioned, which is very human. And it's interesting as this happens, like that, what we're seeing is the top-level human threat analyst that I don't know anybody right now that's doing super sophisticated anomaly detection, advanced AI, that doesn't have a human threat intelligence service accompanying it. And that's our case. We have mobile security, we have a threat intelligence unit for messaging, as well as signaling, firewalling. And, the one thing is that humans can do is we can be everywhere at once. We're unpredictable. We're all over. We have no constraints on our data sources. So we can see what's happening in one continent, in one country, and think about, hey, maybe this is relevant for what's going on in Sweden, or I don't know. But, we have a vantage point in terms of the experiences we can draw on for judgments that machines can't do. They're still bound by, I can look at this and this source. And also there's something to be said for just plain old experience. So interestingly, we're seeing a lot of value on human analysts, advanced human analysts at this point.
Yeah, I think it's human analysts augmented with AI, right? Or supported by AI.
Yeah,
Take out, as Jaye says, take out the mundane, right? Or help spot patterns that run longer, that maybe they don't have the visibility or the scope to see, that they have a larger sort of working set to look at, and they're able to do that. So I think that's really valuable.
I think we've it's not new to have tools out there that look at user behavior, right? So those tools have been around for a while.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of false positives in regards to that. And I think with AI being able to properly analyze what a user's doing, what devices they're connecting from, how they're connecting, what are they doing on a daily basis. And if suddenly what they're doing on a daily basis for whatever reason changes, suddenly they're uploading loads of files, or they're trying to access stuff, or they're doing something unusual, being able to spot that in real time is really critical to being able to protect in real time. I mean, because nobody wants to, you can go through those tools and spot where you've been compromised and close the door, but actually what you want to do is make sure the door is closed before you get compromised. And the only really good way of doing that I'm seeing at the moment is through the abilities of AI, being able to really look at what users are trending, what they're doing on a daily basis. And if that moves quick, okay, and maybe not block. We've seen Terminator. Do we necessarily want to rely on the machines making decisions? But being able to be told pretty quickly, this is different, this is changed, is this normal? We don't believe it is. Do you want to shut it down? Those kind of things I think are important.
Absolutely.
I think that leaving the final decision to the human, at least initially, right, until it's proven, I think that makes sense. And you're absolutely right in terms of, but we've had, sort of user entity, sort of behavior analysis, analytics for some time. The accuracy of that was suspect. One of the biggest problems with any of those tools were basically you had this flood of alerts, right? You had these alert fatigue, and then at the end of the day, it was no longer effective, right? And that's way back many years ago. That's how sort of Target was compromised, through their supply chain vendors. It's not that they didn't have any IPS, IDS, or whatever devices in there. It's just that there were so many signals. You're like, okay, which one do I look at now, right? You got Christmas tree lighting up, and AI can definitely help sort through those things do the first level triage, learning from the humans, and then over time with human feedback, it will improve. I think that's the thing. The one thing that comes to mind is that, again, with AI, as always, the cat and mouse game, there is this level of asymmetry, and we know this, right? As cybersecurity folks, we know this. They have to just get through a couple of times or once even, and we have to defend and be right, pretty much all the time. And so I think back to a point that Jaye made, which is I think we could embrace this, right? And the earlier we embrace it, the more comprehensively we embrace it across all the elements. And I think, Laura, you talked about humans access data everywhere. They're going everywhere. They're using all these different tools, and you can compromise them at any part of the channel across any domain. And so the reality is that with AI, you have to embed it across the board, whether it's the network, which is what we're talking about primarily, or the applications, right? Or any of those elements, right? Whether it's your social graph, your email, your communication, messaging, you have to embed some level of AI in there to detect the fakes, the deep fakes, and to give you assistance to the human to spot these things. If we don't do that, then we're all in trouble, right? Because that's just the nature of it, unfortunately, for us on the good guys' side, on the good folks' side, right? So that's I think that's a good perspective, sort of AI as on the attack and AI on the defense side. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about one of the things that I know the three of us have seen, which is challenges at the edge or the enterprise edge. Because a lot of these capabilities are all in the cloud, right? You have these cloud intelligence, big cloud databases and analyzing it. And sure, in the cloud you have elastic compute. You can go as much as you want or go as little as you want. That's great. But on premises, you still have a lot of IT assets, right? You have your little, IT and OT, right? Your factories, or even your thermostat or your printers, all can be compromised. So what's happening on premises? What do you see on premises? How are companies handling the monitoring, enforcement, and administration, with in light of cybersecurity attacks? And what's the role of the cloud in on-premises, right? How do we balance the two between cloud and on-premises, and how do you share that workload, and how do you bring AI into on-premises? And in some places you don't have the cloud, right? And in some places it's actually disconnected, right? How do you bring AI into that environment? So what are best practices and what are you seeing? Let me start with Laura, and then I'll go to Jaye. Laura.
Oh boy, we have an hour now, right? I was listening to that
we have
list
an hour,
here.
yeah. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. Yeah, actually, we have I think like 6 or 7 minutes. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's
Just
so much
summarize.
going. Yeah.
ChatGPT can summarize, Laura. Come on, you can do it.
Okay. Well, one thing is, we've been so embedded at the cloud and working with big SSC and big SASE vendors and et cetera, and I think thought like they did that there would be that all of this, this consolidation and moving the perimeter, out to the cloud, would sort of calm things down, settle things down at the edge. But what I'm finding is the edge is just incredibly dynamic. And certainly on the side of offensive AI, they are just poking and prodding nonstop on the edge. And a lot of this is coming, just from industrial use cases or 5G, this activity along the edge, but also even with AI being able to use more small language models, is allowing people to pull either just to stay closer to the data processing and the compute power that they need for AI. So so what we're getting hit with, and what has happened to me the past several shows that I've done here in Europe, is just a nonstop line of people wanting to talk about edge security. And it goes back to something I said a long time ago, which was with SASE, there was going to be no more networking. You were going to do secure networking or nothing at all. It would be security and secure networking just all coming together. So it is everything from people just wanting SOHO gateways to, as a minimum, have zero trust and have NDR. So we have a threat detection unit that's integrated with the DPI. And so that's a lot of requests for that. Everything from the SOHO gateways to access points to gateways to routers up to the data center, working with wireless, a lot of Wi-Fi, 5G, and satellite now more recently coming in, and a lot of industrials. So it's incredibly dynamic, and I would say that a lot of these people are still using SASE vendors, using big SD-WAN vendors. They're using SSC solutions, but they're layering their defenses, and they want something at the edge as well, at least again with zero trust and NDR. So, okay. That's my ChatGPT spiel.
ChatGPT version.
Repix.
Yeah, I'll run it by Claude and see if we get an improved version as well. Nah, kidding.
I can think of
Jaye.
5 things I left out.
Well, I mean,
No,
this is OT and IoT is a topic we could talk about forever. I mean, coming from a manufacturing background,
Yeah,
I bet.
it was the scariest part of my day job. In general, OT environments are not looked after by the standard IT team. They'll be looked after probably by a different team. They want to do things differently, and there's a requirement for that. I'm seeing people becoming more and more nervous about specifically OT. It's the skeleton in the closet. It's really, they still want to try and sweep it under the carpet and ignore it. We've made a lot of technological advancements in cloud and in protection and with SAC and SASE and ZTNA. I haven't seen as of yet the same level of advancements when it comes to OT or IoT security. I agree with Laura. It's a topic that everybody wants to talk about because they are concerned about it. They see it as a target and a concern, but there is no magic wand as of yet. I think there is an element of being able to utilize the power of the cloud. I've seen it. Some of those companies are still segmenting those networks and segmenting them even more so, and potentially just using what we refer to as coffee shop networking and pushing everything to the internet so that there is no on-prem connectivity. But we have to remember that a lot of OT is old, is still DOS or Windows like 3.11 and can't run an agent on it and is ran by different companies, even though it's on your premises, and there's no magic wand. But I'm definitely seeing it as a focus, and I think the power of AI can help. I think ZTNA can help as well, because a lot of what I saw in environments that I worked in was companies needing to get in to support those OT environments and doing that via these black boxes on the network that you didn't really know what they were doing. So being able to give Zero Trust network access in for those third parties is something that I'm seeing. But I don't have an answer to your question. What is the best way of doing it? I think right now there are a combination still of ways of doing it. There is no single answer. I'd love to come back in 6 months and see if that's changed, but I'm definitely seeing there being a massive focus on that. So I assume there'll be innovation in that space, because I think there will be a startup or there'll be something happening because it's got a big focus and somebody's going to try and come up with something clever, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And there are, I think number one, the Zero Trust framework and ZTNA does apply to the OT, IoT environment. I think that's one. The coffee shop networking, everything goes to the cloud is certainly a possibility, although there's a lot of internal communications down at the edge between the devices as well. Sometimes all the controls, the control systems are actually down locally, right, depending on what you're looking at. But I do see the increasingly that people are looking at microsegmentation, right? So if you have, and they're trying to move to sort of IP and Ethernet networking, and so they're putting your little devices, your little mobile routers with industrial Ethernet on one side and maybe private 5G or Wi-Fi on the other side. But they're trying to build now, finally, and I'm like, why haven't we done this? Which is, you're now building Zero Trust capabilities into those. And so they can only talk to the control systems and nothing else, right? So it's microsegmentation, as it ought to be or have been in the first place, right? I mean, why is my camera talking to my toaster? It should not be. Not that I have a toaster that's smart, but anyway, but that shouldn't be the case, and that should be a red flag right there. And the second thing is for contractor access or third party access, or to the devices or vendor access to those devices, they should be gated. They should be blocked or protected, and seeing some level of sort of clientless access or browser-based access as a gateway. Right. Historically, there's been the Bastion host, but now I'm sort of seeing browser-based access, sort of front-ending some kind of VDI type approach, right? So that the vendor gets in, the temporary access only, it's valid for 1 hour. You only can get to that one device that you're trying to, or that one machine you're working on, and after that is terminated, right? So I'm seeing now some vendors adding those capabilities in. And hopefully, I think as Jay says, in 6 months or a year, when we come back, you're like, yeah, of course, this is the way we secure OT and IoT. Right? This is the known model. This is Zero Trust model, microsegmentation. guest contractor access is time limited, with full session recording in case you're worried about compliance, right? Those features are coming. I'm seeing some of that across different vendors, but not all there yet. Not really smooth yet. The experience is a little clunky. We're getting there. And then AI can watch, right, and say, wait a minute, you're supposed to be logging into HVAC system, right? Why are you doing this on my HVAC system? You shouldn't be, right?
I think fundamentally, and we've talked about this before, is unification of policy across environments.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the next iteration of where we are. I mean, we've done ACLs before. They sometimes work, they sometimes don't.
Yep.
We've had microsegmentation in the mix. But obviously the concept of kind of universal ZTNA or zero trust everywhere is really setting single policy,
right,
for wherever the users and devices are, whether they're IoT, OT, whether they're an enterprise user or a third party, no matter what device they're coming from, being able to have that visibility across your whole environment, I think is really, really important. We live in a world where our users are in hybrid. They're no longer remote. They're in and out of an office, coffee shop, airports, hotels, then throw in the mix IoT and OT. We really need that one single pane of glass. And I don't like using that phrase, but that single place you can go to see what your users and their devices are doing, and roll over AI on top of that, and being able to see if what they are doing is what they should be doing is really where I would like to be in the next 6 or 12 months.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And the AI told you and said, Roy's doing something nefarious. Not that that's an uncommon thing, right? But I suppose you're looking in the pane of glass every day, wondering when's Roy going to do it, right? It's like, it just alerts you and says he is finally doing nefarious things. He's putting pineapple on pizza in the kitchen. So do you want to stop him or not, right? So things like that, for instance. Very good. So let me wrap it up here. I think I'm running out of questions. But let me go to Laura and see, any key takeaways for the audience who've been with us the last half an hour or so. And then I'll go to Jaye, and then I'll add my key takeaways.
Well,
Laura.
one thing, I think one thing that I would leave us with, thinking about when you were talking about visibility and the single pane of glass, and it made me think about a way that one of our core technologies is being used, which is deep packet inspection, which has been around for 20 years. And in this day and age, it's kind of hot again. Everything all is new again, right? But one of the things that's interesting is what you were talking about in this dynamic environments and trying to have a single policy was how much it's being used now for discovery. I mean, the thought was the network's gone, the network's disappeared. And, we're getting slammed with demands to put that network traffic inspection, in everywhere from the gateway again to the cloud. And the thing is, no, it's not gone away. It's just very dynamic. And, you can have a zero trust set up, but in between, you've got things coming and going and coming and going, just like what you were saying, Jaye, something popping up right and left. So a lot of, we're being used as a tool for visibility, to support observability and mapping, which is new. But on the other end, going back to fundamentals like we were talking about in patching, is data quality. That's something that I was writing a lot about today. And one of the things that I think has brought these sort of core technologies back into focus is that the foundation of everything is having really granular, accurate, high quality data, not only for those day-to-day functions, but to support AI innovation, which has got to happen on the defensive side. We have to be at least on par as best we can with what's going on the offensive side. So back to the future.
Yep, absolutely. Jaye, any sort of key takeaways for you?
Innovation tends to always get close to its peak when we are under the most attack. And I think the last few years, the number of attacks has consistently rose, got more sophisticated. AI's enabled a lot of that. But I'm now seeing innovation rise at that similar pace as well. So I take that as a positive. I'd prefer not to be under attack. And you mentioned it before that you've only got to make one mistake as a preventative person versus the attacker's only got to be successful once.
Yeah.
I can see there's innovation in the marketplace. I'll be very interested to be at RSA this year and see what's happening on the floor in the innovation areas. But I'm positive that we are growing in our ability to combat the attacks, and that's for me important.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think 2025 RSA this year, what we're going to see is hopefully a lot more concrete application of AI, as opposed to, the 2024, 2023 shows where we had these hand waving, right? AI, and it was just, basically chat with your dashboard, right? And I'm like, okay, that's great, but not really. So, I am hopeful, and I think in this conversation, what's becoming clearer is that as defenders, we do have the responsibility of protecting. I mean, really, with the kind of sophistication on the other side, we have the responsibility of upping the game on the defender side, number one. And number two, spreading the protection, as much as we can to cover. I think it's responsibility of anyone who's building any kind of communication software or any software, or providing networking infrastructure or infrastructure per se, to build that cybersecurity defense across the board, right? Because again, you have to, and there's a whole host of people that are not as sophisticated on the cybersecurity side that need that level of protection. And I think it's the responsibility of the cybersecurity community to provide that to them, right? Everywhere in a way that can be easily consumed. And I think that's hopefully what we'll get in 2025, right? As opposed to seeing all of a sudden the ransomware, triple or quadruple their revenues, right? Which they could with AI, like to see it at least go down if possible, right? As opposed to go up. So excellent. Well, very good. This has been a wonderful discussion. I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Jaye, for being with me on this webinar today. I really enjoyed it and hope the audience did too. And let me just end off with, if they want to find you on the internet, where can they find you? Now, for me, it's AvidThink.com, AvidThink, and you can find us. Laura, do you want to send us your coordinates?
A nice short, sweet one. It's Enea.com, ENEA.com.
Yep. And Jaye, I know you have a passion project as well. Enea is really easy. It's a four
HB.
It's a four-letter word, isn't it? ENEA. I guess it is. But yeah, anyhow. Yeah, it's easy to remember. Jaye, I know you have a passion project as well that's really, really important to the community, the Zero Trust Forum. And you want to maybe share your coordinates on that with the audience so they can go learn more?
Absolutely. So yes, you can either find me on LinkedIn or you can find me at zerotrustforum.net. We have a podcast called No Trust, and you can find it on Spotify, Apple, and SoundCloud. And we have conversations just like this today. So thank you very much for having me on.
Well, thank you, Jaye. You have excellent conversations. I think it's a huge service to the community in terms of what you are doing, and John as well. And so, anyway, really enjoyed the conversation today, and thank everyone for their time listening.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Bye. Till next time.